I'm not even worried about skin color. I'm worried about this whole, I've been to prison for 16 years, right? It's not like people are judging me off appearances. They're judging me off a resume here, right? My criminal resume that I was so proud about earlier. Hi, I'm Dr. Yehudah Pryce. I am a clinical social worker. I live in the Pico, Robertson, Los Angeles area in California. I was raised by my Muslim mother. She immigrated over here from Sri Lanka. My father, who was raised Baptist, immigrated at age 19 with $1.50 in his pocket and a pair of platform shoes, right? That was the sort of story that started me off there. My parents actually divorced when I was 2 years old. And my mom eventually remarried, and she married a white man. Now, race, not too big of a thing to me now, but as a kid, as a black boy growing up, I was in search for identity because black people would say I wasn't black enough. Then there was white people in my neighborhood that were using egregious sort of racism, the N-word, and chasing me home. So I felt like I didn't know who I was, so to speak, or I was trying to find a sense of belonging. And unfortunately, I did find a sense of belonging because the belonging came from me being welcomed into the arms of what you say gang members and drug dealers and that sort of social circle when I was a kid. But I felt like I belonged when I was around them, and they accepted me. And the one thing, it wasn't about how I was born, who raised me. It was based on the acceptance and more of the belonging came into being by the more crime I did, how much I fit into this sort of character of a gang member, of a gangster, and I felt power, like holding a firearm as a kid, right? Riding around the town with firearms as a child. I felt powerful, and I felt like I didn't have to do anything to fit in anymore because I had this unique personage that I've created. And that was me. I was committed to being a gangster for quite a while. And as you can imagine, being a committed gangster, not caring about, life or death or whether I ended up in jail, resulted in me ending up going into jail. And I was arrested as a juvenile. I went in and out of juvenile hall. I looked at juvenile hall, though, as a badge of honor. So the more times I went into juvenile hall, the more I felt like my reputation was established, and more fear I garnered on the streets, so to speak. And that was my upbringing. And upbringing, there was a lot of violence. I don't want to underrepresent who I was, right? Because of my actions and my behavior. I robbed drug dealers for a living. That was my sort of MO. I remember being 16 years old and my mother's house being shot up with my younger siblings inside. And my mother's vehicle has been shot up. People robbed and burglarized the house every time I went into juvenile hall, or often when I went into juvenile hall. So that essentially was my upbringing. I grew up in North Orange County, but the social circle I ended up being involved with were from the neighboring county in Los Angeles County, whether it be South Central or Long Beach.
Was there one pivotal moment that sort of changed your path?
So I wouldn't say it was necessarily one pivotal moment. My transformation wasn't a sort of born-again experience, right? It was several different events that happened and kind of happened around the same time. One being that I remember receiving a letter from my sister, my younger sister, essentially telling me that she'll always support me, but she's mad at me because I'm not going to be there to, watch her graduate high school, watch her get married, go to college, right? And that way, and not only that I wasn't going to be able to do that because of the choices I made, and it was negatively affecting, the mental health of family members, and people were sacrificing to be able to, show up at court, and all that came with being incarcerated for as long as I was. I was incarcerated. I began my incarceration, at least when I got sentenced to 24 years, I began my incarceration at the age of 19, right? And so I hadn't grown up. Like, I hadn't fully developed my mind thinking. I still want to say I'm fully culpable for my actions, but just trying to give you, a peer into my mind at that particular juncture. And also, when I was in prison, the first prison they sent me to was the maximum security Pelican Bay State Prison. It doesn't get a higher security than that. And after a while, at first I liked being there. Well, hold up. Not that I liked being there, but I was comfortable in the sense that I was around other sort of gang members and people who participate in the same lifestyle as me, and we all kind of knew the rules and regulations of that. But then after a while, I started looking around because I was just around it so much, constant, no breaks, that I started to think about it like, hey, y'all, we're losers. Like, we lost at life. That whatever decisions, whatever justification, this is not the place to be, which is a big jump from when I thought that as long as you're committed, whatever sort of system of ethics, because I wasn't religious at the time, whatever system of ethics that you are guided by or that you adhere to, it's about having integrity to that system of ethics. So I was a gangster. I had integrity to that system of ethics, and I was committed, right? Don't snitch. Don't back down from a confrontation. And an early death, a person being murdered or going to jail for the rest of their life was part of that. I didn't really mind because, again, I was being committed to who I was, to my identity was, and that was more important than the consequences. But I started looking around and saying, like, okay, maybe being committed to something regardless of the consequences is meaningful, but what am I being committed to, right? And I felt like the sort of gang lifestyle, the gangster lifestyle, was not something I felt like was a worthwhile endeavor to be committed to. Now, that doesn't necessarily translate to instant transformation or knowing what to do, right? I wanted to better myself and make better decisions in my life, not necessarily give up crime, right? But maybe just the full commitment of the gangster persona, knowing that I got sentenced to 24 years in prison. I'm going to get out, in my teenage years and get out in my 40s, right? Like, it's not, it's not going to be, a salient sort of identity when I'm in my 40s. Let me try to expand. And so I wanted to do academic route, took some junior college courses. And then I wanted to explore religion, but I wanted to make a transformation or a change without religion. I first explored Christianity, and I immediately was like, no, this can't. I was raised nominally Christian. It was no JC was really spoke about in my household, but we go there on the specific holidays. We go to the church. So I studied. That was the first religion I studied, and I immediately was like, no, this is not for me. There's no way I could believe this. And I eventually just thought religion was an opium for the masses, something that weak people needed to get through, tough times in their lives. So I studied religion more on an academic level. Like, I read the Quran front to back, studied some Buddhism, and I pretty much was dedicated or committed to improving myself, whatever that looked like, without religion. And then I met a rabbi. I met a Reform rabbi, and the first book he gave me was To Be a Jew, which is the Orthodox book, right? And so I got my first sort of exposure. I actually went there to argue with the rabbi about how wrong his beliefs were. I didn't know really about Judaism specifically. I have only experienced Judaism or only thought about Jews through the lens of other peoples, right? So, but nonetheless, it was religion. And since I was turned off against all religion, I felt like this was just one more argument for me to enter into and to me to win. Obviously, you see that I lost that argument, right? But yeah, so that's what started down this transformation. And I quickly felt drawn to Yiddishkeit. Now, the rabbi offered a couple different sort of framings of it when I was questioning him about how can he possibly believe it. One of the framings was, first of all, you don't have to believe. We're not trying to convince you anything, right? Just be a good person. You don't have to be a Jew. Matter of fact, don't be a Jew. Too many things to do. Just be a good person, right? And I wasn't used to people. I was used to people telling me, like, this is the only way, right? Else you will be, you will go to hell for eternity or something, some framing like that, right? And so when that sort of, I don't want to say it was a soft sell because he wasn't selling it to me, right? But I took it as, wait, hold up, right? That was a pretty good response. I like what is this Judaism? I like that they kind of let you could do your own thing, obviously within some 7 specific parameters, right? But that I didn't have to have a relationship with God only through Judaism. So that was one. And then the other component was he mentioned, and I'm gonna, after the fact, I kind of got the knowledge base to come to this conclusion that I'll give over, is that if you look throughout history, you can see that Judaism has worked for the Jewish people. And so me filling that in, right, like I thought about it, right, because I told you I had experienced or whatever sort of understanding I had of the Jewish people was not from the Jewish people, it was through the lens of other peoples, right? But I'm looking back through the lens of other peoples, and I did notice, right, if I look back objectively, that Jews were persecuted in every land they were at for thousands of years, yet this system they had, this tradition, kept them surviving and thriving, maintaining language, culture, communal structure over thousands of years in different sort of locations, right? To me, it became evident that the Jewish people were the evidence that God existed, right? The Jewish people were that, right? Because I'm a person that, like, I can argue any sort of argument, even if I'm wrong, I feel like, right, that I can argue that argument effectively, depending on the argument, but I feel like it's not necessarily whether you're right or wrong, it's whether you know how to argue, right? But this was this like evidence. The Jewish people are evidence. You could argue whatever you way. It doesn't make sense that the Jewish people exist and not exist in some spectacular marginalized state in one particular village in one particular location, right? But thriving back in their original homeland and all across the world, right? And so, and not only that, I'll add one more wrinkle to that, right? The Jewish people, through the revelation of Har Sinai and getting the Torah, is that the Jewish people brought about a perception of God to this world that fundamentally changed how people related to the world and related to God. If you think about all the sort of daughter religions that broke off and just the way how we think about sort of monotheism. And by introducing that fundamental idea of God that fundamentally changed this world, this small minority being persecuted, what did the world return to them for that? More persecution. But they're being persecuted from an identity that is fundamentally grounded in a relationship with God. So to me, I wanted to kind of explore what that relationship was, right? I didn't know what it would lead to. This wasn't me thinking I'm going to automatically convert. I was in prison. There wasn't a process to convert in prison. But I was reading a book a day. I was reading a book every day or two because I was locked up in my cell, and that Reformed rabbi would give me a book and I'd read it, history of the Jews and different sort of things. I was only with them for about 3 months. Then I transferred to another prison. I won't touch on this immediately. I got introduced to my first contraband cell phone. That's a whole nother story. And then I went to another lower security prison. I ended up working for the Reformed rabbi there for 6 years. But it was kind of in that setting where I moved from just, yes, I have an affinity towards Judaism and Yiddishkeit, don't know what that looks like, to me and me also thinking that Orthodoxy was crazy, that they were just so punctilious about all these little details. I went from thinking that to saying, I want to be an Orthodox Jew, right? Because I found the evidence, the Jews being the evidence that God existed was based on, right, the tradition that allowed them to do that, allowed them to maintain their language, their culture, the communal structures. It was the Masorah, the tradition from Har Sinai, meticulously handed down, from generation to generation. And I wanted to follow that Masorah, which is God's will. And that's how I would have that sort of relationship. And so within prison, I was able to start cultivating an actual relationship with the creator of the universe. And I found that to be the most impactful and effective pathway to me viewing my behavior, my values, and making concrete changes in it.
What were some of your biggest challenges that you faced coming out of prison after this newfound, Judaism? And
well, I think the major challenges I faced was just trying to sustain myself, find, the ability. When I first got out of prison, I was released to a halfway house. I had already reached out to a local rabbi, or local Orthodox rabbi, while I was in prison and told him about my intentions to convert. So I reached out to him the week I got out. About within a month, I applied to the Rabbinical Council of California, submitted my application. I didn't yet live in a Jewish community, but me coming out of prison, in prison I was making about 13 cents an hour, give or take a penny or two. All right, so I didn't have a large sum of money saved up. And the first job I had was washing dishes for $10.50 an hour. So a lot of it, one, was my ability to kind of make enough money to sustain myself and enter into a Jewish community and everything else that comes with it, right? I didn't know how I was going to do that, how that was going to be possible. And there's this sort of self-conscious aspect about it too, right? I remember when I went around the Jewish community, people, asking, what do you do, right? And me, feeling self-conscious about, I'm a 35-year-old man, I'm washing dishes, right? But I want to be a Jew and I want to be in the Jewish community, right? Feeling like obviously there's something left out, why you're so, you so are focused on what you want to become and know what you want to become, yet there's this gap and you're just washing dishes. Like what's going on? But I got over that because again, it was more so the community that helped me out. And so I would say I didn't have your typical sort of transition from prison that a lot of people coming from prison do, based on I was able to find a room to rent from a community member, even though I was just released from prison for robbery, right? Weapons, and somebody from the community, like, yes, I'll rent a room to you, right? And so I was able to move with somebody in the community, find the housing. I used the college route. I went heavy with the education because I knew it was like the pathway for me to enter the workforce and also to, sort of create a new identity for myself, right? A positive identity. If you toil in positive stuff, the sort of results tend to be positive, right? And so that's what I was doing. And I eventually got a job. I eventually completed my Garris in 2020.
So it seems like a lot of your learning of Judaism was done in prison.
So I got introduced to Judaism in 2010. I thought about the Orthodox route in 2012. Again, I say I was connected to Orthodoxy, but not in the way that you get when you're living in a community, when you have a rabbi, when you have, I didn't know any Jews, right? Like I was not aware of any sort of Jews out there in the free world. So this wasn't even about me feeling like I was going to be connected to any community in a significant way. Not only that, I would say is that maybe there was some trepidation because there were people in prison telling me they're not going to accept you. This is what the situation is going to be. And me also knowing that, okay, fair enough. I don't think the issue is them not going to be accepting me because I'm black or anything like that. I'm not even worried about skin color. I'm worried about this whole, I've been to prison for 16 years, right? So that's more harder to explain, right? It's not like people are judging me off appearances. They're judging me off a resume here, right? My criminal resume that I was so proud about earlier. So yeah, most of that learning was done by myself. I imagined what it possibly could be like. I just knew I wanted to be in a Jewish community. I wanted to be a Jew. I wanted to have a relationship with Hashem and whatever else would follow. But I think it makes sense that you can't convert in prison for a plethora of reasons. But one of them, I do believe that if you're going to go through an Orthodox Garris, that you need to be living in the community. It's a fundamental different experience. And when I experienced the community, that's when everything really just entered a whole nother level. I never had experienced random people inviting me over for meals, right? Shabbos meal, people would be like, where you going? All right, come over to our place, right? And me seeing intact families, seeing the children, how everybody's interacting, right? And seeing it connected to and being tied together by Yiddishkeit, right? Was very inspiring and impactful on me. And it helped, I think, take my studying and my sort of more abstract learning of Yiddishkeit to a whole nother level, right? I felt like this what it meant right now to be a Jew, or at least be on the pathway to really being a Jew.
How did your newfound faith in Judaism, help you navigate difficulties in prison, but also at the same time, did it actually make your life more difficult or easier in prison? Now coming in with a rap sheet, and now becoming a man of faith inside.
Me becoming, or me walking in the pathway to become a Jew. A lot of people didn't know how to respond to that or what to take of that. You had standard racism connected to that, because in prison it's super racially divided. You're divided by your race, and race almost governs everything. But again, what it allowed me to do is my newfound sort of faith. It allowed me start to really have a barometer to evaluate my behavior, right? If a situation happens, am I getting angry about it? What does halakha say about anger, right? Again, because there was a lot of people who were religious, quote unquote, but would still be involved with certain activities in prison, right? And I think the beautiful thing, or one of the beautiful things about Judaism, is that we have so many laws connected to everyday actions and behaviors. We have a kind of guide, right? And even if we don't, are not perfect in every sort of situation, we at least have, something to fall back on. Okay, you know what? This is how I should have or could have handled myself better. And then not only that, we have, when we do the bedtime shema, right? There's that sort of, self-reflection of what happened, anybody who angered me, anybody who antagonized me, right? And so there's that piece to it too. And so I found different sort of scenarios where I couldn't simply say, oh, I'm just going to do this or I'm just going to do that. Nope. What is my God demand of me in this particular situation? So I think that more than anything, it gave me so much purpose and meaning, right? One of my nicknames in prison was Shabbat. Because when Shabbos happened, right, we had visiting clothes. Visiting clothes were, if you had a visit, some people would purchase, the newest, cleanest, freshest clothes that wasn't their everyday clothes, and they would wear just for visit. So on Shabbos, those were the clothes I wore, right? I'd make a beans and rice, put the hot water in it before Shabbos, and everybody knew, oh, what's going on? Oh, I can't talk business. Oh, you can't talk to him about this. You can't talk to him about that. Oh, why? Oh, it's Shabbat. It's Shabbat. And so that's how they started calling me. So it gave me purpose and meaning, right? And not only that, I would say that the natural, what it is about Judaism, keeping kosher and all these different things naturally kind of segregated me, right? In a way, so when everybody's having their communal meals and maybe they're making burritos, maybe they're making this, I can't participate, right? I can't participate, but at least I could say it was based on my sort of religious convictions, right? It wasn't me just trying to back off. So I think it helped me, right? Because I could back off from the gang life, from the gang members, because I could say, at least I could point to, I'm doing this for religious reasons, as opposed to some other reason where I might have got more pushback. Not to say there wasn't any pushback, but because at the end of the day, the racial dynamics in prison is that if your race gets into an altercation, you have to jump into that altercation, or your own race is going to attack you in a way much worse than could have happened if you just did what they're telling you to do or what was required of you. So it was a complicated environment, but I think my faith sustained me. It gave me that relationship with Hashem, nurtured, cultivated that relationship, and caused a natural barrier between me associating with people that didn't necessarily reflect Torah values.
Coming out of prison, what stopped you from falling into despair and falling back into your previous ways? It happens to a lot of people who leave prison. So what guarded you from that?
I would say more than anything, it was community. I had a community that embraced me, that didn't judge me, that was willing to give me a second chance, that didn't say I was my worst mistake or my poorest choice. They just accepted me because I wanted to draw nearer to Yiddishkeit or become a Jew. That was good enough for them. My past was irrelevant. And so community. And not only that, what happened was there is a certain sense of security when you have a community behind you, but also you start feeling responsible to that community. So me, in all these sort of spheres that I walk in, knowing that my behaviors and actions not only reflect the God I serve, but they reflect the community. And so I have to be especially mindful. I have to be especially mindful of that. But my community, right, from housing to support, we went through a health scare with one of our kids. The community was there. Community was there for our simchas, right? Like community, right? Community helped me fight against despair because I knew that I had found my place in life.
So looking back on your entire journey, been through a lot, what's like one moment you're most proud of?
The moment I'm most proud of, I will just say the reality, right, that I'm most proud of, the accomplishments I'm most proud of, fill in the blank. I'm most proud of Baruch Hashem being married with 4 children, and raising them in Yiddishkeit. And to me, it brings a smile on my face when I hear my sons, trying to speak Hebrew, or my daughter asks me a particular question about the Parsha, or going to shul as a family, participating in communal events, right? To be a Jew, trying to be a good Jew is such a great thing. And to me, that is what I'm most proud of.
From one extreme to the least extreme, if someone feels regretful about things they have done in the past, what advice would you give them to overcome that, just like you have?
The power of teshuvah, right? We were given this beautiful gift that if we regret what we did and resolve to do better, there's a couple other little nuances in the halakha connected to that, though, but that we could actually transform our sins to merits, right? Like teshuvah is so transformational. And I would tell a person, kind of like when I work with a client, right? A client makes a choice or choices, serious choices that they sort of regret. I look at it and frame it because we could beat ourselves up over it, right? Like, why did I do this? Look how I harmed this person, right? So what I tell my clients when they're beating themselves up over decisions they made or what their situation and circumstances in life are, there's a couple of things I say, but one of the things I say is you could think about your life. You could think about your life as you're writing your life story. In these chapters, how would you want yourself to respond? Right? Like what would make a compelling read to you, right? This challenge happened, right? And all good books have challenges, right? How would you want to respond to this challenge? So when you read that next chapter, you look back and say, oh, yeah, that was tough, but I responded in the way that I feel I could respect myself, and it led me to a whole bunch of other possibilities, because you don't really know until you go on and embark on that particular journey, right? And also, I might add, is sometimes when you're beating yourself up, right? If your friend was going through that same sort of circumstance, you wouldn't tell that friend to just despair. Yes, it's ugly, it's over with, right? Yeah, I don't know how you're going to come back from that. You're going to offer encouragement, not because you're lying to your friend, because you have a proper perspective when you're talking to your friend, and you know those positive words aren't going to lead them astray, but they are going to help them, get through these struggles. Just apply that to yourself.
Is there a message you like to leave the audience with, something that they should keep in mind?
I firmly believe in second chances, as does Judaism. Hashem does as well. When you see this stranger, when people fall short, when people aren't acting and behaving in the way that you know they could, never close that door completely shut. Allow for the possibility to teshuvah. You don't know how many people you're affecting. It's not just me. People gave me a second chance. It's affecting my wife. It's affecting my children. Be'ezrat Hashem, it affects generations down the line because people believed in second chances. Because Jews, understanding our tradition, believe in second chances.
So Yehudah, thank you so much for joining us. Your story was very inspiring.
Thank you for having me.
The Rohr Jewish Learning Institute has the largest collection of Jewish media online. Hit subscribe for more.